The gunshot split the night like thunder. Jake Morgan raised his Winchester, squinting through the darkness at the stumbling figure approaching his fence line. Blood glinted black in the moonlight. The stranger clutched his side, weaving between shadow and silver light. "Come any closer and I'll help you finish dying," Jake called out, voice hard as the butt of his rifle. The figure collapsed at the edge of his property. Something in the way the man fell, dignified even in collapse, made Jake hesitate. He stepped off the porch, rifle still raised, and approached with the caution of a man who'd learned the price of trust. The stranger was Comanche. Old. Gray streaked through his braided hair. A broken arrow protruded from his chest, the shaft snapped clean. The wound had festered, angry red lines spreading outward like lightning. Whoever had shot him wanted him suffering before death. Jake Morgan, 45 years old, former Buffalo Soldier scout, stood over the dying man, memories flashing uninvited. 5 years since raiders had taken his wife and son while he'd been trading in town. 5 years of solitude on this failing ranch, working ground that gave back less each season. "Damn it all," he muttered, lowering his rifle. He dragged the man to the barn, laid him on clean straw. The old Comanche's eyes flickered, aware but resigned, expecting nothing. Jake retrieved his Bowie knife, a bottle of Kentucky whiskey, and the medical kit his wife had assembled before her death. He'd patched enough men during the war to know what needed doing. "This is gonna burn like hellfire," Jake said, pouring amber liquid over the wound. The Comanche's body tensed, but no sound escaped his lips. Jake worked methodically, extracting the arrowhead with practiced hands. The tip had barbs, designed to tear flesh when removed. Army issue, this was no tribal conflict. For 5 days, the man hovered between worlds. Jake fed him broth and changed bandages, not from kindness, but from some deep-buried sense of duty. They exchanged no words. The silence between them held questions neither asked. On the 6th morning, Jake woke to find the blanket empty, folded neatly on the straw, the bandages laid in a precise square. No footprints led from the barn. The old man had vanished like morning mist. Jake stood in the doorway, morning coffee cooling in his hand, scanning the tree line. Nothing moved but the wind. He felt oddly abandoned, though he'd never welcomed the stranger's presence. Then he noticed tracks, not from one man leaving, but several approaching. Comanche tracks. Jake's hand instinctively moved to his holster. He returned to the cabin, loaded his Colt Peacemaker, and placed his father's old shotgun by the door. If they had come for revenge, they'd find him ready. As dawn painted the hills gold, they emerged from the mist, 5 women on horseback. They approached with straight backs and unwavering gazes, their expressions revealing nothing. The lead rider, silver-streaked hair pulled tight in a severe bun, surveyed the ranch with critical eyes. Behind her, a younger woman with a vicious facial scar scanned the perimeter with the vigilance of a seasoned scout. Jake stepped onto the porch, rifle across his chest, face carved from stone. "That's far enough," he called. The women halted. No fear flickered across their faces. The oldest dismounted, her movements fluid despite her years. "You helped our elder," she said, voice clear across the yard. "I am Sarah." Jake's finger rested near the trigger. "Wasn't looking for thanks." Sarah's eyes hardened. "We are not a gift. No man owns us, not even the one you saved." She gestured to the dilapidated fence, the sagging roof of the chicken coop. "We came for the land, not for you." Without waiting for a response, they dismounted and walked toward the outbuildings as if they already knew their purpose. The youngest, a lithe figure with eyes that missed nothing, paused at the barn door and met Jake's gaze. "Nora," she said simply, before disappearing inside. Jake stood frozen, coffee gone cold, as the strangers claimed his land without a shot fired. By midday, Jake's bewilderment had hardened to irritation. The women worked with quiet efficiency, Clara, the seamstress, already mending harnesses. Rachel, the scarred scout, patrolling the perimeter with the keen eyes of a tracker and the silent movement of someone trained to strike unseen. Maria gathering herbs at the creek's edge. Sarah rebuilding the smokehouse door that had hung crooked for 2 winters. And Nora. She'd gone straight to the wild Mustang Jake had captured last month, the beast that had thrown him twice and refused breaking. Now she stood in the corral, her back to the animal, speaking soft words Jake couldn't hear. The Mustang's ears twitched forward, curious rather than hostile. "She has the touch," Sarah said, appearing beside him with silent feet. "Your horse will be rideable by week's end." Jake scowled. "Didn't ask for your help." "When was the last time you fixed that roof?" Sarah nodded toward the cabin. "Before winter comes, it will collapse." He had no answer. Truth was, the ranch had been dying around him, and he'd been too hollow to notice. These women moved with purpose, something he'd lost when he found his family butchered. That night, Jake ate alone in his cabin while they gathered around a small fire outside. He watched through the window as they shared food and few words. These weren't settlers, uncertain women clinging to men for protection. They carried themselves like warriors who'd seen battle and survived. 2 weeks passed. The chicken coop produced eggs again. The garden behind the shed sprouted rows of corn and beans. The Mustang now followed Nora like a devoted hound. Jake rode to Redemption for supplies, senses alert. The town had never welcomed him. A former Buffalo soldier who'd fought for the Union, settled on contested land. Today, something felt different. Eyes followed his movements with new interest. "Morgan," Grady, the storekeeper, nodded tightly. "Hear you got company up there." Jake placed his items on the counter. "Not your concern." "Maybe not," Grady leaned forward. "But Frank Miller's been asking about your creek." Frank Miller, leader of the Blackwater Gang, former Confederate officer turned outlaw with a particular hatred for black soldiers. Jake had avoided confrontation with him for years. "What's he want with my water?" "Two things driving men crazy these days," Grady said, lowering his voice. "Gold's been showing up downstream, and the railroad's looking for the straightest route through the valley. Your land sits at the crossroads of both." Jake rode home with unease sitting heavy between his shoulders. He found the north fence smashed, posts splintered deliberately. A message carved into the gatepost: "Leave or burn." That night, Rachel spotted movement at the edge of the property. Jake tracked the intruder through the darkness, caught him placing a dead rattlesnake on the porch. Another warning. The man reached for his gun when Jake emerged from the shadows. Their fight was brief, brutal. Jake's fist connected with the man's jaw, sending him sprawling. The intruder fought back with a knife, slicing Jake's arm before a solid blow to the temple subdued him. Jake dragged the semi-conscious man to eye level. "Tell Miller if he wants my land, he'd better bring more than snakes and warnings." When the intruder had stumbled away, Jake returned to find Nora waiting with bandages and herbs. "You knew he was Miller's man," she said, cleaning his wound with gentle efficiency. "Miller wants gold in my creek and land for the railroad." Jake winced as she applied pressure. "Won't be the last one he sends." Nora's hands paused. "We know fighting. We didn't leave it behind when we came here." For the first time, Jake saw past her youth to the hardness beneath. "What are you running from?" Her eyes met his, unwavering. "Same as you. The past." That night, Jake called them all to the cabin. Sarah, Clara, Rachel, Maria, and Nora stood around his scarred wooden table as he laid out his rifle collection. "Miller will come with men. 20, maybe more," he said, checking the action on a Henry repeater. "Anyone who can't shoot should leave now." Rachel picked up a Winchester, worked the lever with practiced ease. "I was a scout for the Army before they left me to die after I served my purpose. Learned to track and to kill when needed." Her scarred face reflected the lamplight as she sighted down the barrel. "They taught me both skills well." Sarah loaded a shotgun with methodical precision. My husband was the elder you saved. He traded me to settle a debt. I left before collection. One by one, they revealed fragments of their stories. Clara, kidnapped by missionaries as a child, escaped after learning to make herself invisible. Maria, cast out for healing a child her tribe believed cursed. And Nora, who had watched raiders slaughter her husband and infant son. Jake felt something shift inside him. These weren't strangers seeking charity. They were survivors who'd chosen this land as their last stand. Tomorrow, he said, we prepare. For 3 days, they transformed the ranch into a fortress. Jake taught them to shoot from different positions, conserve ammunition, use terrain. They dug rifle pits, constructed barriers, set traps where riders would likely approach. Nora proved the best shot among them, steady hands and keen eyes that missed nothing. On the 4th night, Rachel's warning call pierced the darkness. Riders! 8 men approached from the north ridge, silhouettes black against the starlit sky. Jake positioned himself on the cabin roof, rifle ready. Sarah and Clara flanked the barn. Maria waited by the chicken coop, shotgun across her lap. Rachel had disappeared into the darkness. Her specialty was tracking enemies and striking where they least expected. Nora crouched beside Jake, loading her rifle with calm precision. Steady, Jake whispered. Let them come to us. The riders halted 50 yards out. One man rode forward, tall, broad-shouldered, with a Confederate officer's bearing despite his outlaw's attire. Morgan! Frank Miller's voice carried across the yard. I'm being generous. Take your women and clear out by sunrise, and nobody bleeds. Jake aimed carefully. This land's been bought and paid for. Only thing clearing out will be you. Miller's laugh was cold. 5 squaws and a buffalo soldier against my men? Those are poor odds. Then you shouldn't mind testing them, Jake called back. The first shot came from Miller's right flank, a flash in the darkness. Jake fired in response, catching the shooter in the shoulder. Gunfire erupted from all sides. Jake and Nora worked in tandem, providing covering fire as Miller's men charged the fence line. 2 fell before reaching the yard. A 3rd stumbled into one of Maria's traps, a hidden pit that swallowed horse and rider. Rachel emerged from darkness behind one rider, knife flashing. Sarah's shotgun roared twice from the barn doorway, driving attackers back. Clara moved between positions, supplying ammunition with silent efficiency. The firefight lasted less than 10 minutes. 3 of Miller's men lay dead or wounded. The rest retreated, dragging their injured comrade. Miller's voice carried from the darkness. This ain't over, Morgan. That gold and right-of-way will be mine if I have to burn you out to get it. When silence returned, Jake found Nora standing beside him, blood trickling from a graze on her cheek. They'll return with more men, she said, calmly reloading her rifle. Jake nodded. Next time they won't announce themselves. Morning revealed the cost of victory, damaged fences, bullet holes in the barn, a dead horse. As they buried Miller's men behind the ridge, Jake made a decision. We're not waiting for them to come back, he said. We're claiming this land proper. That afternoon, Jake retrieved the branding iron he hadn't used since his wife's death. One by one, they marked the property as their own. Sarah painted tribal symbols above the smokehouse door. Clara stitched a design into the new canvas covering the chicken run. Rachel left her knife embedded in the main gate, a warrior's promise of protection. Maria placed 3 stones in triangle formation behind her herb garden. Jake and Nora stood before the main gate, the brand glowing red in the forge. What will you call this place? Nora asked. Jake pressed the hot iron against the wood, burning a single word. Frontier. Because that's what we are, he said, the boundary between worlds. The next morning, a rider approached, not from Miller's direction, but from town. The county sheriff, Wilson, a man Jake had little cause to trust, dismounted cautiously. Morgan, he nodded, eyes taking in the women working around the property. Came to warn you. Miller's got papers, mining rights to this whole valley, including your creek. My deed's legal, Jake said. Wilson shook his head. Miller's got friends at the land office. Judge Thompson signed the order yesterday. Says your claim was incorrectly filed. The sheriff pulled out an official document, handing it to Jake. It's all legal looking. Railroad commission's involved too. They've designated your land for the new spur line. Miller gets a cut of every acre he secures for them. Jake felt Nora's presence beside him, solid as stone. When's he coming? 2 days. He's gathering men. Wilson mounted his horse. You should consider his offer, Morgan. Those papers look mighty legal. After he departed, Jake gathered everyone in the cabin. We need proof those papers are forged. Rachel's scarred face hardened. The land office keeps records. And Miller keeps his real papers close, Sarah added. He won't risk them being examined. A plan formed. That night, Jake and Nora rode to town while the others prepared defenses. Redemption slept as they tied their horses behind the land office. Jake picked the lock, a skill from darker days. Inside, they searched by lantern light until Nora found what they needed. The original survey map showing Jake's claim predated Miller's by 3 years. In the judge's desk, they discovered something more valuable. Letters proving Thompson had accepted bribes to approve illegal claims. As they prepared to leave, Rachel appeared in the doorway, breathing hard. Miller's men, 30 riders gathering at the saloon, she whispered. They're coming at dawn, railroad men with them. Jake's blood went cold. So it's not just about gold. The gold's real enough, Rachel said, but the railroad wants your land more. The gold's their excuse to push you out legally. If that fails, they'll use force. Now the pieces fit. The sudden interest in his creek, the forged papers. Miller wasn't just an outlaw. He was a railroad man's puppet, using gold as leverage for the more valuable prize. They rode hard through darkness, documents secured in Jake's saddlebag. By dawn, the ranch stood ready. Rifle pits dug around the perimeter, traps set along likely approach routes. Maria's homemade explosives, black powder packed in clay pots, positioned at strategic points. They're coming, Rachel called from her lookout position. 32 riders, armed heavy. Jake took position behind a reinforced fence section. Sarah and Clara flanked the barn, shotguns ready. Maria waited by her trip-wired explosives. Rachel had disappeared again, a ghost who would strike when least expected. Nora knelt beside Jake, her Winchester loaded. The morning sun caught the determination in her eyes. Whatever happens, she said quietly, this land has been worth fighting for. Before Jake could respond, the thunder of hooves filled the air. Miller led the charge, pistol raised, 30 men fanning out behind him. Last chance, Morgan, he shouted. Surrender or die. Jake's answer was a single shot that kicked dust at Miller's horse's feet. The battle erupted like a prairie storm. Gunfire crackled across the property as Miller's men charged. The first wave hit Maria's explosives. Earth and men thrown skyward in a flash of flame. The survivors pressed forward, only to face concentrated fire from multiple positions. Jake and Nora worked as one, covering each other's reload, picking off riders with methodical precision. Sarah's shotgun tore holes in the attacker's flank. Clara's rifle cracked from the barn loft with surprising accuracy. Miller, seeing his advantage slipping, charged directly for the cabin. Jake intercepted him, bullets splintering wood as they exchanged fire. They crashed together on the porch, guns empty, fighting with fists and knives. You took everything from me, Jake growled, blocking a knife thrust. Recognition flashed in Miller's eyes. Your family, that was business, Morgan. Nothing personal. Rage exploded in Jake's chest. This was the man who'd ordered his family killed. He lunged forward, knife seeking Miller's heart, but pain exploded in his side. One of Miller's men had shot him from behind. Jake stumbled, vision blurring. Miller stood over him, knife raised for the killing blow. Then a shot rang out. Miller's chest blossomed red. He toppled forward, revealing Nora behind him, rifle still smoking. The surviving attackers, seeing their leader fall, broke ranks and fled. Rachel appeared from nowhere, blood-streaked but moving purposefully, picking off stragglers. The battle had lasted less than 20 minutes. Jake fought to stay conscious as Nora pressed a cloth against his wound. Miller confessed, he gasped. My family. I heard, she said, voice gentle but firm. Stay with me, Jake Morgan. This land needs you. The next 6 weeks passed in fever and pain. Jake drifted between consciousness and darkness, the bullet wound in his side refusing to heal cleanly. Nora remained at his bedside, changing bandages, forcing herbal remedies down his throat. Maria prepared poultices that drew the infection out inch by inch. Sometimes in his lucid moments, Jake would catch fragments of conversation. The women had buried Miller and his men. The railroad men had retreated when confronted with the evidence of fraud. A new judge had been appointed after Thompson fled. Each day, through the cabin window, Jake watched the ranch continue without him. Sarah directed operations with quiet authority. Clara had expanded her mending to include leather goods for nearby farms. Rachel patrolled wider territory, establishing relationships with neighboring ranchers. Maria's garden had doubled in size, and Nora, when not tending to Jake, worked with the horses. Her gift for breaking the wildest Mustangs had spread beyond the property. Ranchers now brought their problem animals to her. Slowly, painfully, Jake rebuilt his strength. First sitting up, then standing, then taking short walks with Nora's steady hand at his elbow. The bullet had shattered 2 ribs and damaged his liver. He would carry the pain forever, Maria said, but he would live. When in those long weeks of recovery, something changed in Jake. The hollow emptiness that had consumed him since finding his family slaughtered began to fill with something else. Not happiness, not yet, but purpose. These women had fought for his land as if it were their own, had bled for it, had built on it. 3 months after the battle, Jake stood on his porch unaided for the first time, watching the sunrise paint the eastern hills gold. The new county judge, Thompson's replacement after the bribery scandal broke, had confirmed Jake's ownership and invalidated the railroad's claims. The mining rights had been returned to him, though the gold in the creek had proven minimal. Just enough flakes to spark greed, not enough to sustain it. The ranch had transformed. Fences stood straight and true. The chicken coop overflowed with fresh eggs. The garden sprawled green and vibrant behind the shed. 5 cabins now dotted the property, homes for women who were no longer visitors, but family. Jake watched Nora breaking a new Mustang in the corral, her movements fluid and confident. She'd saved his life twice now, once with a bullet, once with healing hands during the fevered days after the battle. In those long nights when pain kept him awake, they had shared stories of loss and survival. Her husband, a Comanche warrior, had been killed while hunting. Her infant son, too young even to walk, had died in her arms as raiders burned their village. Sarah approached, offering coffee. The railroad men were in town yesterday, she said. They've changed their plans. The spur line will follow the river instead. Jake nodded. Good land for building. Good land for living, too, Sarah replied, nodding toward the ranch. The transformation wasn't just in the buildings and fields. Jake felt it within himself. The hollow emptiness filled with something unexpected. Not happiness, not yet, but purpose. The weight of the past remained, but no longer crushed him. That evening they gathered around the fire. Sarah, Clara, Rachel, Maria, Nora, and Jake. Bound not by blood but by choice, they ate together, sharing the day stories with the ease of people who had stopped being strangers. Clara spoke of the new trading post she planned to establish at the edge of the property. Rachel described the alliance she was building with neighboring ranchers, mutual protection against rustlers. Maria's herbs were now sought by people from Redemption. Later, Jake stood at the edge of his property, watching stars ignite above the frontier. Nora joined him, her silence comfortable beside his. The moon caught the silver streaks in her dark hair, new ones earned during the weeks of his recovery. "I spent my whole life fighting to keep what's mine," Jake said finally. "Never thought sharing it would be what saved it." Nora's hand found his, calloused palm against weathered fingers. No words passed between them. None were needed. Above the gate, the word frontier stood emblazoned in fire-blackened wood, no longer just a boundary between territories, but a threshold to something new, something worth defending, a place where people with nowhere else to belong had found home. For the first time in 5 years, Jake Morgan slept without his gun beside his pillow. Morning would bring new challenges, but it would no longer find him standing alone against them.